Hello, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Michael Haney. I'm an assistant professor of computer science at the University of Idaho. I live and work on the campus in Idaho Falls, and I have a joint appointment to the Idaho National Laboratory as a cybersecurity researcher. So my job is to spread the word about cybersecurity for anyone who wants to pursue it in a formal education and informal events like this. And I'm brought to you today by the College of Eastern Idaho as part of our month-long awareness campaign. It's almost the end of October, but this is the 17th annual Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's actually changed names over the years, but the effort is driven to make awareness of cybersecurity issues to all folks, all kids of all ages. So I appreciate you guys joining, and I have some slides to go through, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about hackers and malware and stuff. So here goes. Let me make sure I can actually put it in there. There we go. Hopefully the animations will work too. So, Cybersecurity Awareness Month. What is cybersecurity and why should I care? Well, cybersecurity is about security of computers and information and data and all the things that run on computers in what we call cyberspace. And cyberspace is everywhere. Cyberspace is the interconnection of computing systems that run on all kinds of stuff. It used to be computers were, well, it used to be that computers were big hunking machines that took up entire rooms, and they had tape drives and stuff. And it was a couple decades before people actually attached keyboards and monitors to them, as we understand. So traditional computers that most of you are aware of are keyboards and monitors and mice and boxes that have little blinky lights. But now computers are everything. Computers are in our phones. They are in our cars. They are in our toasters and refrigerators. They are in our traffic lights. They are in our light bulbs in our house that can fade or change color by mood. I think that's crazy, but people do that kind of thing. And they run major critical infrastructure type systems like water treatment facilities and electric power grid components and nuclear power plants and all sorts of things that are not really traditional computers with keyboards and monitors. If you buy a car in the last several years, you're basically buying a computer that has four wheels and rolls down the road. And all of these things run on what we call software. Software as opposed to hardware. Hardware is the kind of stuff you buy in a hardware store. It doesn't change much. It moves around, but it is physically solid. Software is soft. And what that means to me is that software can be hacked. So what is cybersecurity? It's about keeping safe and secure all of those things, all of the data, all of the information, all of the access. And we focus on things like privacy, safety, and trust. And we cybersecurity professionals look at components of what we call the CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data and systems. And that's what all of this is about. So what could go wrong? Well, let's start with a few things that you should be aware of. Social engineering, what is that all about? Social engineering is about manipulating people and taking advantage of their likelihood to trust other people. I have friends in the industry who do what we call exploit testing or penetration testing. They try to break into companies as a hacker and then write reports about how they did that to help them secure their facilities. And one of these guys named Jason Street is kind of famous for going up to buildings in a wheelchair with a lap covered with boxes. And he asks for help, and people want to help him because he looks like he needs help. And they open the door and they let him in because he can't reach his badge in his back pocket and he's not wearing his credentials, and they think he must be headed someplace important. And he gets into all kinds of things. Social engineering can happen in person, it can happen on the phone, and it can happen in email. So we've got kind of a fuzzy image in the corner here of a fake Bank of America login that says, "We're sorry we've locked you out of your account. Please type in your password again to get access to your money." And when you type in your password because you trust what you just read, the bad guys run amok and steal all your money. So that's social engineering. What do we do about it? Well, the countermeasure for social engineering attacks is situation awareness. What is situation awareness about? It's about understanding it's about keeping your spidey sense turned up. It's about knowing who you're talking to and under what reasonable expectations you have to share information with who you're talking to, and not just a person by voice, but talking to over Facebook or Messenger or via email or chat, texts on your phone. Having awareness of your situation includes asking, what network am I connected to? Hopefully you can see my camera as well, but if you've got somebody in your neighborhood running around with one of these suckers, then I can make a Wi-Fi access point that looks like your school's Wi-Fi, and your Chromebook at home may be configured to automatically connect to your school network. And so maybe you connect to me while I'm driving by your house and steal your information. I may not have to be that close to your house. I could use something like this and hit you from half a mile away, which is a directional Wi-Fi antenna about the shape of a Pringles can. Come to my class and I'll show you how that works. Is this the real website that I intended to log into? Is this the real Wells Fargo or Bank of America or Bank of Idaho? Does it look like bank was spelled with a 4 instead of an A, or a 0 instead of an O, and says .info or .biz instead of .com that I would expect? If somebody calls you on your phone and says, hey, this is T-Mobile, your phone number's been compromised, are they really T-Mobile, or is it somebody else who's asking you for your password credentials to verify information and log in as you and steal your phone account, change your address for billing, and order a brand new iPhone 37 or whatever version is out now? So situation awareness is about asking questions and knowing where you are and who you're talking to and what kind of data you're sharing and whether or not you should be sharing that data. It's more complicated at a business level, but for each of you, it's important to be aware of your situation, what kind of Wi-Fi access you're logging into, and which kind of account pages you're typing your passwords into. Trust me, it really is that important. I like that image. Found that on Google. I think it's fake. It's a pretty big shark. Anyway, that's situation awareness. Here's another problem: password cracking. What is password cracking all about? Well, your passwords are your keys to all the things that you get into. It's how you prove to a system that you are the owner of the account that you're logging into. We call that authentication. There's all kinds of different ways to grab passwords. There's good guessing. That could be based on looking at your Facebook page and realizing that your favorite thing in the world is your cat Fluffy, and then trying your password as Fluffy and me and Fluffy1234 and Fluffy 2020 until eventually you get in. Dictionary attacks are using a dictionary of words like all of the English language and letting a computer try to log in as you, using any common word or combination of words that they can come up with. A brute force attack is a little different. A brute force attack is trying all the possible combinations of letters and numbers and symbols that you can come up with. So it sounds slow and tedious, but computers are really good at slow and tedious. You would try A, and then you would try AA, and then you would try AAAA. Rainbow tables attacks have to do with pre-processed passwords and trying huge dictionaries, databases, gigabytes and terabytes worth of possible password combinations. So where do they find all these combinations? Well, if sites have been hacked or compromised, if you use the same password on Facebook that you use on your school website is the same password that you use on some random game site that just popped up yesterday, and that random game site gets compromised, that hacked site holds on to a copy of your username and password, then the bad guys can use that against Facebook and against your school and against your bank and every place else. Data dumps are locations where lots of different hacked sites full of passwords have all been aggregated so that hackers can build new rainbow tables and new dictionaries. And they might actually steal your password by breaking onto your computer and running a program we call a keylogger. It logs all your keystrokes as you type them, and it waits for you to type in your password to a certain site, and it records it and sends it to the bad guys. And that happens way more often than we want to think. But actually, often people break into other accounts just with good guessing. So be careful about using passwords of things that you have posted to your Facebook page. What do we do about it? Well, in the industry, we refer to this as authentication management, identity and access management. But for you, home users, it means choosing good passwords and choosing stronger passwords than Fluffy123. So I've got some examples here. I'm going to graduate in 2022. It probably affects many of you. Maybe you shouldn't use this password now that I've put it in a slide deck. But it also means using different passwords on different sites. So if you've got a Facebook account, you might try FB dash, I'm going to graduate in 2020. Oh, I changed the year. Or if you have an Instagram account, you might use IG dash, I'm going to graduate in 2020. So you can remember the phrase. It's easy to keep track of. You don't have to write it down. And it's got, oh, I don't know, it looks like 25 something characters there that are not too hard for you to keep track of. If you do have trouble keeping track, there are programs called password managers. Don't go back, go forward. Password managers, the one I like is called KeePass, but there are plenty of them out there. Google has a password manager. Firefox has a web browser password manager, so does Chrome. Ways of holding on to really strong and complicated passwords and making up all kinds of different unique ones for different sites. And then you don't have to remember them and you don't have to write them down. You do have to remember your master password that lets you into all the others. And so there's some risk there, but you can sync it to the cloud. You can sync it on your phone and keep track of these things all over the place. And then there's also a question of using a factor other than just your password. And that's called a multi-factor or a two-factor authentication. So turning on authentication with your phone account so that you receive a text when you log into a site, using a token like we have at the University of Idaho, has a little button that I push, and every time I push it, I get a new unique number, and I type in my password plus the unique number that comes from the token, and then I get into sites that way. Lots of different ways of doing two-factor or multi-factor authentication. We in the industry are getting better, so stay tuned. But if you have a site that makes it available, you should use it. For Facebook, for Google, for any of the common sites that you log into, having a second factor and a strong passphrase are both good practices. And then it's a good idea to change them up regularly, at least annually. They used to say change every 30 days. If you've got a strong passphrase and a second factor, that's not really necessary. But once a year, it might be a good idea to come up with a new one. So that's authentication management. What else is out there? Malware. I've heard people pronounce this malware. We're not talking about, the kinds of clothes that you wear to the mall. This is about software that is malicious. And you've probably heard of viruses and Trojans and other types of things. There's all types of malware out there. There are rats. There are keyloggers that I mentioned earlier. There are advanced persistent threats. These are APT, sophisticated attacks with software that are wielded by other nations, adversaries, Russia and China and North Korea. Oh my. There are crackers and crime packs and all types of things that you can download by accident or in the background that can run on your computer and do all kinds of terrible stuff. There are armies of bots, these bot armies and botnets and zombie armies that are out there designed to take commands from a single attacker and leverage all of the bandwidth across this range of computers that they've broken into over months or years in some cases, and then turn all of their attention to attack some other target that they want to knock offline. Then, it's a problem. Why would anybody hack me? Well, this is a great graphic from a few years ago. There's lots of reasons why someone might hack you. It's not that you have specific data that they're trying to steal, but they can use your computer for lots of other activity. And rogue miners, coin miners, Bitcoin miners is one of the most common types of what we call payloads, exploit payloads out there, that people will take over computers just to use them to try to make some money. And they'll run it in the background without bothering you at all. So it's important to keep your computer safe because it cuts down on everybody receiving spam and everybody having cybercrime perpetuated across the internet. And so it's important to keep things protected. How do you do that? Well, you do it with what we call configuration management. What is configuration management? It's about installing your patches. It's about keeping your phone up to date. It's about keeping your Chromebook up to date, installing patches and then rebooting when it's required to, rather than saying skip it or ignore it, I don't need it. It's also about keeping what we call your attack surface minimal, not running programs that you don't need, not installing every single app that you see on some Facebook ad and then playing it for a minute or two and then leaving it in the background, because all of that software is potentially full of bugs and problems and vulnerabilities and things that can be taken advantage of by hackers. So it's important to keep your inventory, to understand what computers you have and which ones are turned on. And it's not just about a laptop or a desktop. It's about phones and toasters and refrigerators and all those things that have computers in them. and keeping them patched and up to date. I still don't know how to patch and update my car, but I probably should figure that out because it seems to have a computer in it and it seems to connect to the internet because it tells me weather reports and traffic and things like that. And I'd like to have it patched as well. That's all important. That's called configuration management. What else do we have to worry about? Phishing. What is phishing all about? With a PH, it's about hackers sending you bait that they want you to click on because it's a lot easier to get you to download and install software than it is to try to force that software onto your computer. And drive-by downloads happen in the background as you click and look at links, as you take an IQ test or a personality test or some site that says, which Disney princess are you? Those are all known, well, maybe not all of them, but probably most of them are known attack techniques that get you to click on stuff. And if you connect to them with a vulnerable computer, if you connect to them with a web browser that hasn't been patched and updated, then you can suffer a drive-by download. You can have something installed on your system in the background. And I chose Target as an example story here for a couple of reasons. One, it seems kind of ironic that their corporate symbol is a giant bullseye, just waiting for someone to attack them. About, when was that? 10 years ago, they were the victims of the largest identity theft hack to date at that point. There were millions of credit cards that were stolen over the Black Friday shopping weekend after Thanksgiving. As everybody was going to get their Christmas presents in the stores and swiped their cards, every one of the point of sale systems on all Target stores in North America had a keylogger logging in the background and keeping track of every credit card swipe. They stored it all up, and then they shipped gigabytes of information out of the stores to hackers in St. Petersburg and Odessa, Ukraine. And the way they got into Target to set all that up ahead of time was through a phishing email that went to an air conditioning vendor that supported Target stores on the East Coast. And the air conditioning vendor company had laptops that were vulnerable, and somebody clicked on one of those links and downloaded something in the background, and the malware spread through the vendor. And as they took their laptops into Target stores and connected them to the network to manage the HVAC systems, the malware then spread from those systems onto Target's point of sale systems, the cash registers that are basically Windows computers. And they spread from there up to the corporate headquarters and then back down to all of the different stores across North America, and installed a little program that was just designed to run on a point of sale system and listen to credit card numbers. And it all started with one email. There are a lot of attacks and a lot of stories out there about devastating hacker activity that all started with phishing emails. And it's serious. It's a serious problem. So what's one of the things you can do to protect yourself from phishing? Well, one, situation awareness, and two, configuration management and installing patches so that you're not vulnerable to these things. But one of the best things that you can do as a regular home user is to run with what we call the principle of least privilege. Having an account that does not provide more access than is necessary to get your job done. That means in Windows, for instance, this is difficult to do on phones. I still am not happy with the way Android and iPhone run their systems with a single user. But if you log into a Windows computer at home or at school, I'd say chances are about 50-50. If you're in a school setting, you probably do not have an administrator account. You probably do not have permission to install software that you download from the internet. If you're running at home, chances are you do have permission to install software because it's necessary to have an administrative account, a computer account that can manage that computer and can install updates and all of those things. But Windows, after Windows Vista and 7 and anything running Windows 10 now, has an easy ability to run an account that doesn't have permission to install stuff. And you can run that account and still be able to check your email and Facebook and Instagram and browse YouTube videos and do all those wonderful things that you do on the internet without being at risk of drive-by downloads, without being at risk because you don't have permission to install stuff. And when it tries to install something in the background, there's a pop-up that says, hey, you need to enter another password and be a different user and have an administrative privileged account. And that can be a warning to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not trying to install anything. or wait a minute, I didn't want to enable access to my camera and my microphone, or to put this extra software service in the background. And if you meant to, then you can type in the password and do it as intended. And if you didn't mean to, you can stop it from happening. And there was a study in Australia about 8-9 years ago that said that can stop 80% of all security threats on the internet just by running an account that doesn't have privilege to install software automatically. It's an easy fix. It feels like an inconvenience, but you won't notice it 90% of the time because you're not installing new stuff every day. Unless you're on your phone and you download every app that you see, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a bad idea. So that we call privilege management. What is ransomware all about? This is another major problem on the internet these days. Clever hackers, and they learn from each other, somewhere along the line, somebody decided, hey, wouldn't it be cool if instead of just hacking this data, we locked it all up and we made it inaccessible, and then we held it ransom, like a data kidnapping. And we said, hey, you can't have your data anymore. And these are the kinds of screens you might see on a computer that's been hacked that way. The one in the bottom right is what was known as WannaCry, and at the time was the largest ransomware attack across the internet. But there are targeted attacks that might hit your school or your city government, or the election or campaign offices, or the water treatment facility, or the local hospital, and wreak havoc by locking up all the data records and saying you have to pay a ransom to get them back. This can be a problem. And it's a big enough problem, and people are paying these ransoms, that it's continuing to escalate, and people are continuing to see more of these attacks happen all over the internet. Often they're targeted at individuals or at individual companies or agencies, but they can also be widespread, untargeted, and hit the entire internet, and you never know what's going to happen next. So again, keep yourself patched, but there are other things you can do. Backups are the simplest, least expensive, and most effective way to deal with ransomware. Because what happens is you make a copy. You can use a cloud service. You can copy your images off your phone to your Google Picasa or whatever Google Picture Manager thing they have now, or use the Verizon or T-Mobile cloud apps, or have something a little more significant like Carbonite or one of the online cloud backup systems. And keep those things offline or disconnected from your computer. Keeping thumb drives at home, holding on to, I'm using it to prop up my laptop right now, but having one of these external drives standing by so that you have a copy of your data. And when something terrible happens and somebody holds your data ransom by encrypting it all and saying you have to pay me to get it back, you say, man, I'm not going to do that because I have my own copy. And you restore your backup and you get back to business. The advice to keep backups of business data has been around for as long as computers have been around, as long as business records. It predates computers. You have paper file cabinets, and then you may have copies of those files someplace else in case there's a fire or a flood. And it seems that people have not learned that lesson, because as ransomware attacks happen and companies are forced to pay those ransoms, there's something wrong with their backup solution. Or the backup got compromised also because it's online at the same time. So this is a simple solution. If you're working on a senior project paper that you've been working on for months, and you need to make sure that you always have a copy of that, backups are good, not just for ransomware, but for accidental dropping your phone in the toilet kind of problem. There's all kinds of ways that you can lose data, and it's important to have a second copy someplace. The more important the data is, the more important the backup is. So make your backups, people. What else? This is kind of the biggest problem. Why is cybersecurity always in the news and getting bigger, and more people that I talk to know about what's going on? I've been doing this for 20-something years, and I used to have to convince people that cybersecurity was a real issue and that it affected everybody, even in rural Eastern Idaho, not just in the big Silicon Valley and New York, Wall Street kind of companies. The problem is that the hackers don't need to have a lot of people. They can be extremely effective with just a laptop. And that's what we call an asynchronous attack. They are faster, quicker. They can make things happen at lightning speed, and the cleanup takes a lot more time. And so more and more companies and agencies and organizations have realized that they have to have more people doing cybersecurity type work. So this is kind of good news for you kids. If you take this on as a career path, as something that you want to focus on or help with, there are lots and lots of jobs out there. It's a major part of the economy. It's a major part of our national security. It's a major part of every business operation and their cost and their expense to try to fend off hackers and keep their backups and patch their stuff. And we need people doing it. It is growing continuously. The numbers I see keep getting bigger. And so now they're saying 3.5 million jobs around the world by 2022, tens of thousands of jobs in the federal government, tens of thousands of jobs at state and local governments, and in every different type of company. It's not just about IT or finance or education. It's about healthcare. It's about agriculture. It's about forestry. It's in the energy sector. Any place where anybody's doing any kind of business in modern society, they have computers and they have data, and they need people. And we don't have enough people trained up to fend off the bad guys and solve the problems. And it's going to keep getting worse before it gets better. So please consider it. What do we do about the fact that we're outgunned? Let's go forward. Nope, I got stuck in a loop. There it is. Go to college and get some knowledge. Where can you go to college to get knowledge about cybersecurity? Well, here's a few places in Idaho alone that have cybersecurity degree offerings. The three major universities, public universities within the state of Idaho, and I don't mean to leave out the others. BYU Idaho and Rexburg has a great cybersecurity program as well. But I do work for the state of Idaho, and as of this year, I'm a project manager for a statewide cybersecurity education initiative that is meant to build cooperation between these schools, to build stronger curriculum, to have more degrees. There's a new bachelor's in cybersecurity available from the University of Idaho. There are degrees in at the bachelor's, master's level coming from each of these schools over the next couple of years. And as you guys consider going on to college, cybersecurity is not just a couple of classes that you can take in Idaho. It's going to be an entire major and a major emphasis that will prepare you for any of the jobs in the 21st century. There are also quite a few great two-year degree programs, and we have them all over the state. Every one of the schools in the Idaho system is working on cybersecurity offerings. We have certificates, we have associate's degrees, we have associates of applied technologies, which are technician degrees that can get you great paying jobs the day. And in many cases, I hear stories about people getting job offers before they graduate. They tend to finish school and then start working the very next day, making a really decent wage. And it's not something that you have to move to San Francisco or Boston or Chicago to get. You could work with the pandemic going the way it is. You can very likely, like me, work from home and still be effective using the internet to get to your workplace. All of these schools and all of these areas have cybersecurity programs. And for the last 20 years, the University of Idaho and Idaho State University have nationally accredited cybersecurity programs, reviewed and accredited every several years from the National Security Agency. Our goal in the state of Idaho is in the next 5 years to have all 8 of these programs accredited by the National Security Agency. Currently, the Northern Idaho College two-year degree program is accredited. College of Eastern Idaho is working on their accreditation now, and that's expected to happen in the next year or two. And every one of the other programs has something available in cybersecurity. And it's across the board. It's not just about IT, computer programming type people. It is a lot of programming, but there's also opportunities for mechanical engineers and people to work in field operations on things that they do with their hands, to know something more about cybersecurity of large scale systems, energy systems, nuclear power plants and hydroelectric dams, and traffic control systems and water treatment facilities. Forestry and agriculture are affected by cybersecurity. John Deere tractors the John Deere recently bought an electronic mapping company so that they could build in GPS and mapping and share data across fields so that the tractors can be automated and provide different levels of fertilizer or herbicide to different parts of the field based on soil structure. all of that data needs to be protected. And can you imagine if somebody hacked all the John Deere tractors in Idaho and destroyed our potato or barley crop? It could have very serious effects for our security, for our safety, for our health. And so I don't want to end on a note of like, wow, there's a lot of problems out there, but gee, there's a lot of problems out there. It also means there's a whole lot of opportunity for you guys to learn about ways to apply security principles to any kind of field that you want to work in, any family business, any sector, any industry. There's a need for cybersecurity, and Idaho is a special place because we've got a long-standing, well-developed, and nationally recognized cybersecurity education program, and we are expanding, and we are working together, and we are building up curriculum and cybersecurity labs and teaching all the kids about all the hacking stuff all across the state. And my confidence level in our graduates being able to get jobs is very, very high. It's going to be in the 90 to 100% range of graduates who are able to get jobs within the first year of graduating, regardless of recession, regardless of struggling different industries. This kind of skill set will last you the rest of your life. And it's a great area to focus in. So I encourage you to do so. So remember, kiddies, go to college, get some knowledge. With that, I will stop and take questions. You can add them to the chat channel, or for those of you who are watching the recording of this after the fact, please feel free to email me. You don't need a capital E, that's a typo, but my email address is mhaney@uidaho.edu, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. If you have questions and don't feel like asking me directly, talk to your guidance counselors, talk to your teachers, ask questions, and if they have questions, they can reach out to me, and I will be happy to answer as many of them as time allows. So with that, I'll stop and say thank you very much, and stay safe out there. So I'll take a deep breath and see if anyone has any questions in the chat channel. And since we're at a decent stopping point, I will end the recording.